Hey, everybody. All right, we're at it again. Tuesday, December 15th, 2020. So it's the last show of the year for us. And I wanted to thank Dan, of course, Dan Peretti, and Post Effects Digital Studios with Dean Baker. And, every week I give you guys the Bitcoin update. Today's Bitcoin price is $19,443.19.
Boom.
And it's up about $1,000 from last week. This time last week it was 17,751. So we're bouncing off of 20,000. Eventually we'll get through. All right. So today we have a good friend of mine and a great soul. And well, let's get into it with her. Jora Young. And today we're going to talk about. Hey, Jora.
Hey, Joe.
How are you doing, dear?
I'm doing okay. I'm doing all right.
I can't thank you enough for being on the show. It's maybe outside your wheelhouse to do this kind of goofy kind of conversation online, but I thought that you could add some stuff to our conversation today. But today actually, all right, so the world is a strange place lately, and it's the last show of 2020. And I was hoping that we would be able to do a couple more, but scheduling wise and whatnot, we can't. So because it's such a difficult year, I have a meditation practice that I bring up on the show once in a while. And it's the same practice that Jora has. We belong to the same meditation group. And I don't know if it'll work for everybody, but as artists and filmmakers and musicians, I thought that it would be interesting to do this conversation. And it may help someone, it may not. And we hope to keep it interesting for people who aren't interested. Maybe it'll be inspiring, and maybe you'll take it up now or later. But before we get into it with you, Jora, if you could explain the meditation instructions, right? Because they're the world's most simplest instructions. And then we'll have this conversation, and people will be like, all that? From those little instructions. So if you want to just say hi to everybody and then give the instructions, and then we'll have the whole talk.
Well, okay. It wasn't what I expected, but hello, everyone. Hello, Joe. It'll be fun having a conversation with you. Thank you. And thanks, Dan. I guess the instructions, probably the simplest way to explain the instructions is sit down and be quiet. And, it's something we've heard our whole lives. But actually, it really is essentially that simple. You sit peacefully, quietly, without expectation, and you close your eyes gently, and you look straight ahead into the darkness in front of you without expectation. Just sit quietly, gently, with love in your heart. And you repeat slowly any calming word or phrase. And it's really about looking. So you're just looking sweetly, quietly, no thoughts. Every time a thought comes up, you just brush it aside with your calming word. And you sit like that even just 5 minutes. And it's remarkable what kind of things will open for you. And that's it. It really is sit down and be quiet.
It's that simple.
Yeah, I can't believe you do this, Joe.
That's what people say, and
He never shuts up. Like, he's always thinking. Like, even when he's not thinking, he's like thinking of thinking.
So it is the
great. Because he does this, Dan.
That's why he does this. I understand.
Yeah. Because he gives himself some time to incubate. All these other things can bubble up.
I used to think he was just napping.
He may have been. I don't know.
Truth be told, if I didn't meditate, I would be a different person. It's the single greatest thing I've ever done for myself.
Right.
But let's find out a little bit more from Jora. Hey guys, is there a live mic in the back room there? Because we got a little echo.
Yeah, no, we hear it up here.
Yeah, we hear what you guys are playing in the background.
There you go.
Thank you. Hey Arlene, how are you, dear? Arlene, I've spoken to, and my wife Stacy is on. Arlene, I know, might be interested in this. We've spoken about it. So the simplest instructions in the world, and really not that difficult to do. I call it sleepitating sometimes. It's okay to fall asleep. There are no rules other than what she said.
Yeah.
But you get the most benefit if you can meditate when you aren't sleepy, when you can really be alert. You really get the most benefit when you can look sweetly and have a conscious awareness that you're sitting there in quiet.
So I looked up the word meditation in preparation for this, and I got 570 billion responses off of Google.
Well, there's
Yeah.
different types.
So there's a gazillion different types, but the instructions are basically the same. Some of them are a little different. Obviously, they get more, they dice them apart and whatnot. But the idea is to be silent and to be with yourself. And yeah, there are different types and whatnot, but we don't want to get into all that. People need to find their own way, you know. But so, Jorah, tell us why. All right. So a lot of times we have artists on the show.
Mhm.
We're filmmakers and musicians and actors. And
Painters and
yeah, but so you have experience in that world before you started meditating. And so tell us a little bit about your life before meditation and then your life after meditation.
Ooh, well, actually, I've been meditating for, wow, almost 50 years. But it's been on and off. So I can tell you, what I'm like when my meditation practice is strong and when I get forgetful and don't meditate. I think I come from a crazy Southern Italian family.
forget
And
about it.
yeah, we're really high strung and everybody talks at once. And if somebody's sick, they've got the worst sickness on the planet. I mean, everything is amped up to highest volume every time anything happens.
Sounds like my mom.
Yeah,
She might be listening.
I'm just kidding.
Let's be gentle with Lynn. I don't want to call it in, dude. We don't want an example of that right now.
No, it's every Italian.
the scenes in Moonstruck, that's my family,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what it meant to really be able to calmly deal with issues. I didn't know what it meant to be patient. None of those things. That was never modeled. And I think what meditation has done for me is it's opened up a whole new way of dealing with stress. It's allowed me to manage that energy because that intense Italian, it's not an accident that a lot of people in the creative arts are Italian, because that energy can be really useful if it's channeled. And I think all the ability to get in touch with your emotions is really a powerful thing. And to be able to manage them is an even more powerful thing. And I think what meditation does is it allows you to be much more in touch with your emotions, but to channel them productively and to not immediately overreact to everything. And I think it's done that for me. The other thing is, while my career was in conservation, and I think the other thing it allowed me to do is to really focus. I mean, I think being able to really be very focused on my work, on my studies, has been another real benefit. I think when you can learn to not constantly let that tape go in your head, that crazy tape that we all have, that tape that's constantly criticizing, that's constantly berating ourselves, probably even more than others. When you learn to meditate, you learn to sort of quiet that tape for a few minutes. You learn to push that tape aside. And I think that helps you be more present in other ways, so that when you are doing your work, when you are focusing on something else that's important, you can shut down that critical mind and be present to what you're doing. And I think meditation has really helped me with that. Because another thing about being born in a crazy Italian family, Dan, you can relate to this, they're very critical. You know,
Yes.
our parents tend to be very critical. And I think shutting that down has been really helpful for me. I think I could go on and on about what meditation has done for me, because every time I would fall into a period of forgetfulness and not meditate, and I see that parts of myself that are not productive emerge, I go back to meditation, I'm immediately grateful. I'm grateful for the practice in so many ways. I think it just makes me a kinder person to others and to myself.
Yeah, there is a kindness. There is one of the greatest things for me, and it goes to this, is that I'm no longer offended by other people's thoughts.
Mm.
And it allows me to be kind in situations where I wouldn't have been previously,
I don't believe any of that.
because it's like right now, I'm able to maintain my kindness while I'm being stabbed in the back. But what happens though is that kindness becomes a very natural thing when you're meditating, because you're slightly in tune with something else, a different type of your consciousness, and you don't have that tape loop. And like when we're in production, when we're musicians, when we're about to go on stage or in front of a camera or about to say roll or take, or you know, that every thought in the world is running through your mind like a freight train. And the only way for me to work with all these problems of thought is through meditation. So my life has changed tremendously as a performer and as a creative, and as a father and as a husband and as a son and a brother and all that, and as a friend. Actually, Dan could probably speak a lot about that. I'm probably a different person to Dan, because I met Dan before I started meditating. But yeah, the benefits are just, and they just continually unfold.
Yeah.
But again, it's the simplest thing to do, and yet none of us do it.
I used to find that for me, because I'm an artist, I paint and I draw a lot. I used to. I don't draw as much as I should. But when I was a kid and all the relatives were over and everybody was in the kitchen, and who made this chicken? I did. Oh, it's delicious, but it's a little dry. You know, like it was always like everybody was always in the house. Things were happening. And if they weren't, there was like my aunt was there, my brother, somebody was there. So I used to sneak off into the back room, into my mom's office, and put a record on and draw for like literally 7 hours. Like that was my meditation. Nothing else mattered. The chicken didn't matter. The girlfriend that was calling didn't matter. The wrestling team, none of the schoolwork, none of that mattered. Nothing stressed me, because I was 100% focused on drawing and nothing else counted. It was almost like my meditation, where I would spend hours doodling, and the only thing that mattered was the graphite hitting the paper for me. You know what I mean?
I know a lot of artists that would say something similar to that. But like the difference between that, and that's a great thing, and like that's like runner's high, and I get it when I ride a bicycle.
Yeah.
Sometimes
You get it when you play music.
When I'm working, when I'm dog grooming, I get it, because
When you go on stage, it's different, like you said.
but the difference is, for me, it's like what we were saying earlier about silence. Like as musicians and as filmmakers, like we understand the power of silence in a piece of music or in a film. It's wildly more powerful when you try and do it alone,
By yourself.
when you're just silent to yourself.
Yeah.
And by silence, I think of it as like your senses. Like when you shut your eyes and stop listening, or be in a quiet place, and when you don't move, when you shut down your senses, when you silence your senses, when you go back to them, they are different.
Yeah.
You are
Now,
more
does it
aware
count
of
if you
them.
do it? If you so say they say 15 minutes is normally the meditation time that you're supposed to do every day, right? What happens if you do 2 hours every day? Do you like walk around and like you're floating? I'm like, if all you do is meditate, like where would you headspace be at like 2 on Sunday?
Well, that's like, sure. You want to take a stab at that?
Well, I want to react to something you were saying, Joe, which is Eckhart Tolle, whose books I really enjoy. He said stillness is where creativity and solutions are found. And I think one of the great qualities of meditation is just what you were saying, that you actually purposefully absorb yourself in stillness. And in our culture today, we are so far removed from stillness, from true stillness. I mean, we sit down and we're doing 10 things. We're looking at our phones, we're looking at the TV, we're something's always moving. And if you really want to get in touch with that place inside you that's creative, you really benefit enormously by allowing stillness to wash over you. It's that stillness that allows you to, in the creative process, you need a period of incubation. It's in that incubation, that quiet, where real ideas can emerge. And I think I bet you know this feeling that when you meditate, sometimes like a really cool thing will pop up the minute you really achieve that stillness. I think
I've heard you say that more than once.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's powerful. It's very powerful. And the longer you meditate, the greater the benefit, because you can sink deeper into that still place. It takes some time to brush aside thought. So, if we meditated, all day long, who knows? But
Yeah.
when we meditate for 2 hours, it is really, you start to really feel this enormously joyous and uplifting kind of awareness. It's pretty great.
And it's like that for me too. When I go fishing, because I fish a lot, right? I fish probably more than I should, but but when I go fishing, I literally stand there, and again, nothing else matters, but I'm staring at my bobber for an hour and a half, and not really thinking about nothing much, but what's going to happen to that bobber. And I literally sit there, and I'm sitting there, and I'll feel the wind change, and I'm like, oh, wow, I'm actually almost like a meditation. I mean, obviously it's not what, sitting in the dark, focusing on the light, but it's kind of like some of those things make you think. And then I become creative. I think about things when I do it.
Yeah.
All the time.
You're a creative guy. Yeah.
Fishing is a great metaphor, because you have to be conscious. You can't fall asleep. You can't fish asleep.
And the bobber's like the light, I swear, I one time I fished too long, and I went to sleep, and I still saw the bobber.
So imagine if you were focusing on the light, but no, I really think you're right. I think that act of one-pointedness and stillness, and also being in nature.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that that's a very good, peaceful way to.
Do you guys meditate in nature a lot?
Oh,
Yes.
God, yes.
Yeah.
The wind and the birds is like your mantra? Is that how you do it? Until
No.
a Mack truck comes by?
No. But if you get the opportunity to find yourself in nature, and you have the time to meditate, and you do meditate at that time, it's different than in your home and the kids are in the other room, or what, there are great times to meditate, and in quiet, Mother Nature with quiet is an amazing thing. But you do wind up hearing a lot more birds. You hear.
Oh yeah, it's like that when it's like when I fish, I hear birds, and I feel
Yeah.
like I could feel the wind change, and I see the water still. And when it's it's weird, I become part of what's going on around me. It's kind of like my therapy, actually. But
So Arlene said, meditation taught me not to let others live rent free in my head.
there you go.
So that's interesting. People living rent free in your head. And, I've heard other people, I think Jim Carrey mentioned
Taking
something
space
like that.
in your head, yeah.
There's a bunch, because we're in the business of entertainment, there's a whole bunch of people in the business who meditate. And Jim Carrey said something almost exactly like that.
Yeah.
He found himself having arguments with people that they had never brought up the point. And he was arguing the points that they had never made. They weren't there, just in his head. And he was spending a lot of time arguing with his agent, or arguing with a movie director, or arguing with whoever it was. and the conversation had never begun,
And now he meditates.
and he was carrying on this conversation that never began
Mhm.
alone. And yeah, so that's like having others live rent free in your head. And I think a lot of us have that once in a while. We'll have an argument with someone in our head, but the argument's never been started by the person. We're assuming that this would be their reaction. And that's what I was saying earlier, where, yeah, others people's thoughts don't matter to you. It's not that they don't matter as much. They don't affect you, because when you find stillness, you wind up seeing that somebody in a state of mind that's not their normal self, you see them as super agitated unto themselves, and that it has nothing to do with you.
So meditation is basically a therapy for most.
I don't know if I would call it my therapy, because meditation is free. Therapy. All my therapy costs me money.
And you tell me I'm most creative when I'm on the toilet. So
But okay, so I would agree with all these points being made. So let's talk about something fun.
Why, that was really fun. Can we see what was wrong with that?
Because you're picking on me.
I'm not picking on you at all. I'm
All right,
asking you simple questions.
So can you name a couple of great meditators
Can I name?
in the business?
I don't know.
Your mother should know this one. Paul McCartney is a big meditator.
Oh, I thought you meant like the masters' names, because I don't know any of them.
No,
They're
no.
very difficult.
No,
Tina Turner's a big meditator.
Tina Turner's a big meditator.
David Lynch.
David Lynch is
David
a
Lynch, that's right.
huge
Richard Gere.
Richard
Richard
Gere
Gere.
actually spent 6 months in India.
Yeah.
Somebody
Yeah.
recently, I just heard say that was it Joe Rogan maybe?
Yeah, so
He
Joe
does
Rogan,
like that weird tank that he floats in.
yeah, he does a float tank, and
Oh.
he has
Okay, one of my personal favorites, Hugh Jackman.
Hugh
Yes.
Jackman.
He's
Well,
one.
he definitely seems like he meditates.
Why
Yeah.
is that?
I don't know. He just seems so on it. Like he's like the man. He's a great actor. Like everything he touches is gold. The guy just looks good. He's always like kind on TV, like does amazing things. It just seems like he would be somebody who's
I didn't,
grounded, I would say.
wasn't surprised to find out that he meditates, but when I think of Paul McCartney and Sting,
See,
those
Sting
are
I could see
guys I
too.
say, oh yeah, of course they meditate. Like, look at them.
You wouldn't say Hugh Jackman?
But no, I wouldn't.
Why,
no,
'cause he's
like
Wolverine?
Wolverine and all that.
Whatever.
action
That's an
stuff,
action movie.
But, yeah. But
He's very present to everything, though. I think what you were saying, Dan. I mean, he seems
Yeah.
extremely present to everything.
Yeah. So does Sting, though.
Oh yeah, Sting's amazing.
obviously, like those types of performers, yeah. Because imagine standing in front of 500,000 people. I mean, Paul McCartney, like you'd have to meditate to be Paul McCartney. How are you going to stand in front of that many people?
You know, if you
He's been
think
doing
about some of the people we've mentioned, that they have a kind of humility about them. You know, like if you
They're
think
not
of,
egomaniacs.
yeah, I mean, like whenever you
Or-
see Paul McCartney, like hanging out with, you know,
Sting.
some talk show person, he seems so accessible.
Mhm.
And so he doesn't seem, he has a humility about him. And I guess, you know, he's lived a long time too, which might be a benefit. So maybe it's a benefit of meditation. I don't know.
He's becoming wiser as he gets older.
It does feel like that. Yeah.
I find him very accessible. I think that he jokes people sometimes and says when he meets people and they call him, oh my God, Paul McCartney. And as a joke, he goes, it's Sir Paul McCartney.
Yeah.
You know, like, but as a joke. But actually, so you were probably heavily influenced by the Beatles, no?
Oh, of course. Yeah. The Beatles were, you know, that was what I grew up on.
I think, yeah, my mom too. The Italian thing, maybe?
No, it's just a generational thing.
Everything thing in my generation.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody loves the Beatles.
So did you see the Beatles come on like the Ed Sullivan Show
Oh, I did. Yeah.
and sat there and watched it? Like that was like a huge event?
I remember it. You know, it was one of those moments in my life that is just penetrated and been a part of me. Yeah. And
My dad was at the Shea Stadium concert.
Really?
Yeah, the big one. Like they had never like toured
Yeah,
after
yeah,
that
yeah.
because they couldn't
Yeah.
hear themselves.
So
when
that's
Beatles
incredible.
got
He won it on a dance contest. He won tickets on a dance contest.
And got to
He
go.
won the dance contest and got tickets to go see the Beatles at Shea Stadium.
That's amazing. Not that he could have heard anything.
No,
But-
No, he,
nobody
he said he
knew.
couldn't hear anything. He said he felt like his ears were bleeding.
But then, all right. So then they come out with a couple of albums, and then they become hippies. They become like whatever they became. I don't know. They went to India.
They did acid and
And
hung out with
yeah.
Harvey. What's his name? Rank. The guy who plays the sitar.
Ravi Shankar.
Shankar. Yeah, that's the guy.
And
But-
then you can hear that in While My Guitar Gently. I mean, you can hear that in the music of some of George Harrison's music, because he picked up the sitar.
Actually,
But
did you?
The Beatles evolution really influenced me. I mean, their finding meditation, and all of their albums became part of how I think I evolved as well. And I mean, George Harrison's solo album had a big influence on me.
Did you happen to see the Martin Scorsese documentary on him?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah,
It's pretty amazing.
yeah, it is.
Where he stopped playing the guitar because he was like, "Yeah, there's too many people that play this thing way better than me. I'm going back to the guitar."
Yeah. Well, but I mean, he was also a big meditator. And
Well,
they
he hung out
talk
with like
about-
the Dalai Lama and stuff too, right?
I
it
don't
the Dalai
remember that
Lama? I
part,
think it's
but
the Dalai
yeah,
Lama.
he was hanging out with a lot of cool people. But he certainly the documentary is fantastic. If anybody's a Scorsese fan,
You need to see that.
You need
It's
to
about
see
George
that
Harrison,
one.
and it's
Yeah.
it's two episodes, I believe, and
Is
an
it-
hour and a half, 2 hours each. It's long. I think there's 2 parts.
I don't know. I saw it.
I
years
saw
ago.
part 1. I didn't see part.
Oh, you
2
got to
yet.
see the end.
Yeah.
Because it's pretty amazing. You know, if sometimes there's an aspect to meditation that goes beyond the pale,
Mhm.
and it becomes evident in that film, especially when his wife talks about his passing, the moment that he passed.
Yeah.
But I don't want to get morose about these things. But it's pretty interesting if you're a Scorsese fan, and Scorsese was a fan of the Beatles and of him and whatnot, so they checked it out. You know, he went and did all the homework on it.
Yeah.
But it was pretty amazing. But so the Beatles, that influence of, so for your entire generation, as the Beatles came up and changed themselves, then all of their fans were exposed to all their ideas. Is that when you got into meditation?
Well, I don't think that the Beatles were the reason I got into meditation, but it affirmed my own quest. I mean, we were looking for something more than, I mean, the world was in turmoil, and we were young people exposed to a lot of terrible things, including a war that none of us felt was right, and friends being killed in a war and finding out things about our country that really we had no idea. I mean, we were raised by World War II parents, and they told us that our country was the greatest country on earth. And then here we were watching on television our soldiers doing horrendous things, and learning that we were in a war that wasn't a war of necessity. And I mean, there were I think it was such a, and then of course we were exposed to the nuclear bomb and all of those kinds of terrible things. And I think by the time I was in junior, senior in high school, I started realizing there's got to be more, there's got to be something better. And I think I just went on a personal quest, and my quest took me to all kinds of different things. What can I say? There were all kinds of things. And many of them were paralleling what the Beatles' quests were. And I started reading everything I could get my hands on. And I read a book by a fellow by the name of Baba Ram Das. It was called Be Here Now. And it's still in print. And Baba Ram Das really was probably my biggest influence. And he basically said, it's not about drugs. It's not about it's not about rock and roll. It's about transcendence. And he encouraged one to find a meditative practice. And so we it was a little group of us, we went in search of a meditative practice, and glad I found it.
You know what's so interesting about that is that so I was born in '69. So the next generation, my generation that came up, we lived in the excesses of what rock stars did in the '70s, and were never exposed to what you got exposed to earlier on with the Beatles. I was never a fan of the Beatles and didn't watch the trajectory of their journey.
I was big time.
And so I never knew that there was an answer. I just thought the world was crazy and everybody got as crazy as they could and had fun doing it. And then, of course, as I got 9 and 10 years old, they're dying. A lot of them dying. And then but it's amazing the difference between the two generations. And I, now that I have kids and their input is so much greater with their phones and their computers and all these other things. And nowadays we have a lot less wisdom teachings that we give to our children. And it's a strange place to find yourself being a parent. Like, so to have a conversation with somebody who grew up with the Beatles and, the world was crazy. The world is crazy now.
It is.
Yeah, it's always been crazy, I think, maybe.
Probably. But I think there are parallels now too, with just like it's kind of off the rails right now.
It's kind of off the rails like it was for your generation. And when I look at my kids and we come on the podcast and I have to find guests and I have to discuss materials, that's actually why I decided to do this show, was to say to people like, hey, if it's really not working out for you, and you're not getting, any clarity on what to do, you could try this. You could try this. It's incredibly simple instructions. And if it works for you, great. And if it doesn't, okay, you tried, But the other thing I wanted to talk about was presence. When you talk about Hugh Jackman and some of these other people, how present they are, I can tell you that as a musician, that's wildly important. And as an actor, it's even more important, especially in front of a camera.
Yeah, because it's easy to just not notice things around you that are beautiful if you're just pounding away at the pavement all day long.
It's very easy to not be present, especially in this world. But when you're on camera, it's different. It's different when you're on stage as a musician or as an actor. On stage is one thing because your audience is the last row can't see the wrinkles, on your crow's feet. But on camera, if you're not present, everybody knows because the camera doesn't lie. So that's one of the greatest things for me. I can remember taking an acting class, and I didn't realize that there was a meditative process to the warm-up of the acting class. And it's true in a lot of Meisner stuff where they play these theater games. And all those theater games are designed to do is to make you present and in the moment.
Yeah.
It's
like public speaking almost.
Well, it's a little different, like with the acting games, because they want you interacting with a partner.
Right.
You know what I mean? So the theater games are, and the things that actors are taught are how to be present with another person.
Right.
But now I haven't taken an acting class in 20 years, but my meditation comes in real handy as an actor.
Yeah.
And as a musician and as a filmmaker and as a director.
So you don't get as butthurt as you used to either. Because I used to, like, when I was in art school, it was always something that we would do is we would take everybody's project would go up on the easel and we'd all sit around and we'd critique it. And the teacher, instead of saying, okay, you critique it, and somebody just rips it apart, she would say, give 3 good things and 3 bad things.
Yeah.
Now, you never remember any of the good things.
No.
You only remember the bad things.
Yes.
Which was really weird because you got butthurt or you got sensitive about, oh, well, that's, you don't really, blah, 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 blah. And instead of taking it for face value and bettering yourself, you then got angry.
Yeah.
And all the good things that they said was so great, and you should have just focused on that, but meanwhile, you couldn't get past it. But so that's the thing about meditating. Like I've meditated, and I've actually like when I was younger, I used to have these weird out of body experiences. I think I told you about this.
Yeah.
And they stopped. But I tried meditating, and it's difficult not to think about like, oh man, like I didn't do this, or that person said this about me, or I messed up doing this, and to get that out of your mind is like pretty impossible for a lot of people.
But Joy, we can speak to this. We all have that problem.
Oh, yeah.
As meditating, yeah.
Everybody's mind is like Mercury, you know, everybody's mind is constantly moving. But the reason that you choose some word or phrase that has a calming or a sweet kind of meaning to you, it can be something as simple as love. But the reason that you choose that is it helps you sweep away those constant wranglings. It gives the mind something to do. It's like putting, you know, the mind is always moving, and you choose this calming word or phrase. It'd be like putting a hamster on a wheel. You're just putting the mind on a wheel.
But my mind would go towards love and think about it, like all of the things and people, and I don't see. I would race down that hole.
Okay, continue.
And then you just bring it back. You go down the rabbit hole, you just bring it back.
Gotcha.
And that's it. That's the process. And the more you do it, though, the longer the periods between your mind interjecting these crazy thoughts become. And
so, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
so your mind is now conditioned to keep running. That's how we've conditioned it. It's just how it, and it takes some time to condition it to slow down, and you slowly repeat your word or phrase. And if you have a faith tradition, you could use a name of God, and you can just use that sweetly, gently, calmly, just letting that word put your mind on a wheel. And when a thought comes in, and it does, you just bring it back. And what start to become aware, become more aware of the thoughts, and you'll start to become aware of yourself, bringing your mind back. And that's all really good, because that means you're becoming more and more present.
Okay,
And
so now, is there somebody who's like I guess somebody who would be a master at meditation compared to somebody like who never meditated? Like, what's more important? So would you call the word a mantra, or that's not a mantra, just the word?
Yeah, I mean, it is mantra.
Okay, now,
word.
what's more important, that part or the light that you're looking into? Like, because when you find the light and you're saying the word, which focus do you focus more on? Like it's very difficult. I mean,
But it's a personal thing, right? So it's different. It's different because your mind is different than my mind, right?
right,
And the way that your mind perceives your senses is different than mine,
right.
right? So like if I was autistic, I couldn't put on a certain kind of shirt or a sweater because it would
Make you
me
itch.
a different way, right? So everybody's senses interact with their mind differently.
Correct.
So the idea is that we all have this mind that's never stops wanting to work. It's how it's designed. So then the mantra is to give the mind something to do because it has to do something. And then what happens is that for some of us, I don't know, it's difficult to explain, but for me, if I can take that and then I can slip it over here and I can have that going on, then I have a different consciousness, a more true consciousness, a higher consciousness that is then able to focus itself while the mind I've had doing this job over here.
So when did you learn that through your meditation? That took you a long time. It didn't happen overnight, obviously.
It doesn't happen overnight. My God, it happens over. It takes, meditation is only difficult the first 40 years.
When you're 40?
Yeah, it's only difficult the first 40 years you do it. And after that, it's a breeze.
Then you're dead.
No
Yeah.
problem, yeah. But
one of the things that's interesting, Dan, is people who've meditated for a while, they often talk about, they don't usually say their mind, they often say the mind, because you do start to sort of disassociate from that wrangling.
Right.
Start to see it for what it is. And I mean, the mind is this powerful, useful thing when it is properly employed, but when it's not fully in the present, it drags you to the past and makes you think about some dumb thing you did or something you said that you're embarrassed about, or it drags you to the future and makes you think about something, oh my God, I'm worried about. But if you are focusing the mind in the present to do the work it needs to do, it becomes useful. And when you can calm the mind and sort of sweep it away for a little while and allow your true self to be present, it becomes a much more, I guess you could say,
Powerful, I guess.
uplifting,
Mhm.
and the mind gets a kind of nourishment from that. But it is interesting. Most people who've been meditating for a while talk about their mind as the mind.
Right.
It's not me. It's something I have. It's a tool.
Okay,
My
so
hands
say
aren't.
somebody who's been meditating like you for 50 years, and say somebody who has been meditating for 8 years, right? How long have
No,
you done
I'm
this?
probably
6 years?
I'm probably 12 years.
That long already?
Yeah.
Wow. And then somebody who's never or has tried. Now, when you meditate, do you automatically go to that spot, or
No.
does it change? It varies how often you meditate.
Well, it'll. There's a lot of variability. On some days, I sit right down and become very present. Some days, I can never shut it off. And I don't really think that whether you've been, whether someone's a 5-year meditator or a 5-month meditator or a 50-year meditator, I don't think that's necessarily an indicator of your ability to have this sort of present experience. I think there's plenty of people who early in their effort to bring a meditation practice into their life, they'll have great experiences. I don't really think it's about that.
Gotcha.
I think we have a tendency to look at the world in a very linear way. That there's this linear trajectory, and I don't think it's quite like that. I think that there are certainly people who are their way of being brings them easily to a quiet place. And I think that there are others of us, myself included, that there are days that I have a very rich and quiet and and nourishing experience. There are days when there's just wrangling, but every time you sit, you benefit. And even if you just sit quietly for 5 minutes a day, the research shows you get a stress relief. My husband's a research scientist, and he does research on meditation. And he did a research recently that recently published, and they found that when they did this form of meditation that Joe and I do, when you do this form of meditation, even for just 7 minutes, 5 times a day, they got a statistically significant stress reduction.
Okay,
So
well, I understand that.
meditation, and we're so Western, we judge everything, right? Oh, I had a good meditation, a bad. I don't think it's like that. I think just sitting and being as present as you can with some kindness and love in your heart, it's really about getting off the little ego. So
Okay.
just sitting quietly, that intention of sitting quietly with some love in your heart, 5 minutes, and you'll see a difference. It's crazy. I swear, it's
No
crazy.
matter what your lifestyle is. So then my next question is that
But
actually.
no, hold on. It is crazy though. I have to say that it's crazy. It's so profound. It's the simplest instructions in the world, and if you can get yourself to do it and begin to enjoy this process of nothing, it's profound. It's
Yeah.
wildly profound on so many levels, and it continues to unfold the more that you do it.
Right. Well, that's good where I'm going next. The next two questions I have.
Hold on, but Chris Bowman, a
How's it
mantra or staring at a candle flame or doing breath work can keep the monkey brain occupied. Then you can become the observer of the thoughts and be present in the moment. That's very nice.
I like
Thank
that.
you, Chris. Go ahead, dude.
So I guess my next question is what you just said. Basically, the longer you do it, obviously, like you said, the further you go, right?
Well, no, I'm going to explain that to you. From my point of view, this is how it works for me because I like to garden, right? So for me, before I meditated, the weeds in my garden were really high. So the garden, the weeds being my mind, and I'm not my mind. I'm not the weeds. I'm the good vegetables, the good plants, right? And the weeds are this thing I gotta get control over.
Mhm.
So then, as you meditate, you're plucking out these weeds and trying to get rid of them, and it's hectic, and you're trying, and then after a while, the weeds get smaller, and they become a little bit. You get them when they're just little sprouts, and you learn how to throw out these thoughts as little sprouts of weeds instead of these big things that take over the garden.
Mhm.
So there's a clear difference for me, and I'm more like Jorah, where I had a hectic life, and I have, and people who know me know I'm like Ricochet Rabbit.
Yeah.
So for me, it was very helpful in that regard, where like last week's guest was fantastic, had a military background and has a very many millions of views on YouTube, and laughs at the people who comment. That would drive me nuts. But he's able
Yes,
to
yeah, I
laugh
wouldn't
at
have
it.
a problem with that either.
Yeah, you wouldn't have a problem with that, right? But meditation still would benefit you and benefit him because
Absolutely.
you do have weeds in your garden.
Oh, absolutely.
It's just that mine were a certain type that was, so for me, it's about weeding the garden, and the more I do it, the quicker I'm able to get rid of the weeds when they're small and they're not huge and overgrown and taking up tremendous space, like Arlene said, like living rent free in my mind.
Right. Okay. So that's pretty good.
Does that
Right.
answer it? Does that help?
That was pretty. Yeah, that's pretty good. So I guess my next question would be then. So then the lifestyle then. So the reason why you don't eat meat is because for what reason now?
Well,
If you're
I was
meditating,
vegetarian before I started.
no,
meditating.
no, you weren't, because I ate pork loin with you like 3 months before you started going to the meditation.
Well,
center.
yeah, I mean, there was, okay, but I technically consider myself vegetarian for 25 years.
Yeah, that's not
almost
true.
30.
Dude, I've eaten
But
hamburgers with you on your boathouse.
I wasn't perfect though. No, I wasn't
Okay.
perfect. But,
okay.
But majority of my diet for a long time was vegetarian.
especially when you lived in New York. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but
City
you know
area.
what? The problem with having that conversation here
Yeah.
is that I don't want people to think that there's a have to. I make the choice to be vegetarian, and before I meditated,
Okay.
and now while I'm meditating.
Oh, okay.
So I wouldn't want to, like, my way isn't everybody's way.
Right. So you
You
could
know,
still,
like-
obviously you could still meditate, but eat cow. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't put any limitations on anybody.
Okay.
So the idea
What's the benefit of it though?
of not eating meat?
For meditation.
That's a whole nother podcast.
Another program.
Yeah, that's a whole
Okay.
nother program.
All right. Well, thanks for not answering that
No,
one.
I can't. You know what? That's the other funny thing is that, like Jorah was saying earlier, how Westerners they love to judge and criticize.
Yeah.
So the problem about having these conversations is that if we were to say publicly what my idea is and the way I do it,
You
then
become pompous. Yeah.
people then assume like that's what they have to do.
Right.
And I would never want to take away from somebody's
Absolutely.
inner, working and their own way of working this out for themselves. Like,
Yeah. Like if you were a Christian, you wouldn't want to sell crack to the kids at the church. Understand?
Well, it's no.
Just say it.
No.
It's happened.
No, what I'm saying is that if I make horror films, I'm not going to only tell people that horror films are the only way to go.
Okay. So my.
If you want to make a film, make any film you like. If you want to meditate any way you like.
Okay, great.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Awesome. All right. So I guess my question is, does it benefit you by being a vegetarian?
But being vegetarian, along with the physical benefits, like she was saying, of stress relief, of meditation, along with the physical benefits of being
Health.
vegetarian, make my life better. Absolutely, 100%.
Just health wise.
Yeah, but then that also is in the delight of living,
Right.
which is not easy to live, right? So living is a difficult thing, and it's a never-ending problem for everybody on, every pay grade, every social status.
Correct.
It doesn't matter the color of your skin. Like, the human condition is difficult.
Okay.
So for me, it's a number of things that I've added together that are working for me now that make the human condition more bearable
So if you ate like
and
a
loving.
if you ate a hamburger, I'm sorry, I'm sticking
No,
on
go
this.
ahead. Go ahead.
I'm gonna
Go
drop
ahead,
it
dude.
after this.
No, you don't have to drop anything.
If
Go,
you
ask
eat
me whatever you
a
want.
hamburger, your meditation tomorrow, you're gonna be like riding a cow and you can't get it out of your head. Like out of curiosity, like how does that work?
Okay, that's interesting. I'm not going to be riding the cow in my
You know
thoughts
what
and
I
my
mean.
meditation.
You know what I'm saying? I'm just asking. Like, what is the difference?
The difference is,
Your hormones change?
Dan, we work with dogs, right?
Yes.
Okay. I don't eat animals. It's just that simple. But that's a whole nother conversation that offends people. So far, we haven't offended anyone. If when vegetarians speak, they actually offend meat eaters. And I don't want to do that, dude. Like, if you're happy eating meat, have at it. If you don't want to stop,
And meditate. And meditate.
I'm not here to judge nobody or tell nobody how to live their life or how to meditate or
Let-
what to
all right.
eat. Because then I'd
All
look
right.
like I'm woke.
Yeah.
I'm not that guy.
Then
I'm not here to
I'm
tell
better
you.
than you. Yeah, I hear you.
Jorah, help me out, Jorah.
Well,
Yeah.
a word in edgewise, but
Sorry, that might have been my fault.
and what's the show called again?
I know.
You know,
Enough about Dan.
No. It's enough about Joe is really what it's called.
And I'm trying to tell him, yo, it's not about me. It's not about me. And he's like, but you.
well, yeah, guys, I like your friendship though. It's very sweet. And that's very sweet to see.
Dan's my therapist as well, just so everybody knows.
That's scary, isn't it?
I think that there's a lot of different things that people call meditation. You know, I think of it like I do some introductory meditation classes, and I'll often show a slide with a whole bunch of different kinds of bread on it, like Ethiopian injera bread and pita bread, and you know, a beautiful whole wheat bread, and Wholesome's, you know, Wonder Bread, and all these things. And I ask everybody, what is this? And you know, people say bread. And then I say, do they all have the same nutritional value? And everybody will go, no. Are they all going to have the same benefit to everyone? And people will say no. And I'll say, well, yeah, like this one bread is a healthy bread, but if you're gluten intolerant, it would be really hard for you.
Yeah.
And this other bread, this Tibetan barley bread, is this amazingly healthy bread. And, you know, my point is that all meditation isn't alike. There'll be meditation practices that may be stronger and provide a healthier outcome. And there may be some meditation practices that just wouldn't work for you, that it wouldn't connect with you. So I think that the benefits of meditation are real, and and it's tremendous. I mean, there's 50 years of research now in the West. In the West, you know, it all has to be scientifically done. Of course, it's been done for thousands of years, and every faith tradition really has a meditative root to it. But in the West, it's been here about 50 years, and we've been we've been studying meditation for about 50 years, and it's incredible. I mean, you can go to any WebMD or Johns Hopkins. You can look in almost any doctor's practices these days, and many will be recommending meditation for MS, for fibromyalgia, for all these different, for heart conditions, for all kinds of different conditions. We know that there are tremendous benefits, and it's valuable to find a practice that's going to enable you to find that calm place, that still place, that focus place, and really to enable you to be present, to not let your mind vex you with the past or torment you with the future. And if you get a practice that enables you to do that, you will get benefits. And the longer you do it, other things will start to unfold. And maybe it will start to affect other things that you do in your life. It
Right.
may start to affect the things you choose to eat.
Yes.
It may start to affect the way you start to spend your time. You might find yourself, I don't know, you might find yourself wanting to do more things to help other people. Because one of the other things that my husband's research showed is that meditation can actually increase your empathy.
Huh.
They don't know why. It was an unexpected finding. It was like, huh? But it actually increases a person's feelings of empathy. And so, I mean, you may find yourself wanting to do things that are more helpful. I don't know, things start to unfold. I don't
Mhm.
understand it, but research is indicating that it works. So, I mean, I encourage people to find that practice that works for their digestion, you know.
Right. Right.
But I also encourage people to avoid Wholesome's Wonder Bread because
Right.
there are
Right. Right. Right.
being called meditation right now because it's hot, it's woke, as Joe was saying.
Yeah.
So there are people who are passing things off as meditation that may not give you the real benefits that we see in a robust practice.
So you
So
have a great way of explaining things. So when you say, so that people understand, I kind of understand what you mean when you say being present or living in the moment. Like, well, you said like a bunch of times being present with yourself. So explain that. What you mean by that? So that I would be so somebody who never heard of this before would understand what you mean by that. Because some people don't understand. They're like, oh, I'm with myself all the time. What does that mean? You know?
well, think about yourself when you're fishing,
Uh huh.
and think about what it feels like to be very aware of the bobber, the line, your feet in the water if you're a fly fisherman, for example. What you're completely absorbed in what you're doing. You're not distracted by the fact that hey, I don't think I paid my gas bill this month. Hey, I
Right.
don't. You're not letting any of those things that aren't right there into your consciousness. Being
Right.
present is being completely engaged in what is right there in front of you. You know, right now, we are right here with each other, and we're looking at each other and we're listening to each other. Being present is being aware of what is right here. And when we are completely and utterly present to what is right here, people sometimes use the word mindfulness for that.
Hmm.
Mindfulness practice is actually the practice of living every moment completely present to what is right there. If you're drinking, you're aware of what you're drinking. If
Hmm.
you're with someone, you're aware of them. You're not
Right.
thinking about something else.
Right.
So that's what being present is. And actors understand that. You know,
Right.
actors understand that when they really find that presence with that character and they truly commit to what they are doing in that moment, that's when the magic happens. Not when
Yes.
Yes.
they're thinking about
It's exactly. I mean, I understand all of that. But it's funny that you say every time that I do get this is the truth too. Whenever I say I am fishing and I do get present, I catch a fish or something weird will happen or an owl will land next to me or a cool bird will fly by. Like as soon as I get engaged, as soon as I wander off, nothing happens. As soon as
Mhm,
I come back and I engage myself in the act and I'm in the moment, something happens.
mhm. I think
There
that,
is,
yeah,
yeah,
I do.
there's, consciousness is involved, right? So
Right.
and that's something that's not studied as well, and something that's not understood by science, and something that maybe hopefully they'll dive into in a greater
Yeah.
way in the future. But for me, it's just a type of consciousness that you're not multitasking. And like when I thought of Dan speaking about the wind changing,
Yeah.
that was a moment of being present. When
Right.
you feel the wind change, when somebody walks past you and you feel the wind pass you,
Yeah.
um, you're present.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
that happens to me a lot, but but a lot of people don't see that in their lives.
a lot of people are too busy on their phones and they're multitasking. I mean, I had it this morning. I was trying to send out texts and answering emails and checking messages, and my wife was trying to tell me something, and she's like, "All right, let me know when you're available." You know, it's like,
Yeah.
it's 2020. You know, first we have to check, what Donald Trump said, and then we all have to take care of our own business.
I got more phone calls. I got more phone calls from you today than I did my own girl.
Yeah.
I was trying to eat chicken wings, and then you just kept calling me.
Well,
I was very busy today.
Well, because I have, yes, it's the holiday season, so we're very busy.
Yeah, no, we had a lot of business stuff going on, but yeah. So I have one more question,
Go ahead.
and this is going to be my last question. I'll let you guys talk.
Go ahead.
Um,
We're loving it.
so you guys talk about this thing where when you meditate, this might be for another show. I might be opening up a can of worms here.
Go ahead, dude. It's fine.
So you guys talk about traveling through the astral planes, right? And there's a certain thing you get to when you get to the light, and you go into the light, and if that does that happen in a 15-minute meditation, or do you have to do an hour meditation? Does that happen years after you do it? Does it happen the first day you did it? Did you ever see it? Did you never see it? Are you still seeing it? Is it not happening? Like, I don't understand any of that.
That is so great. I'll take a stab at that one quick. I'll try and solve our problem.
Or maybe we
Tor.
should explain it to the people so they get a clearer view of what I'm trying to ask.
So if we're dealing with consciousness, the problem with the mind is that you're projecting these things. You're projecting what you want in the future, or you're trying to remember the past. So the problem with what you're talking about and having a discussion like this on this right now about it is that then when new meditators are taking on the practice, or myself or Jora, if we're thinking about these things you hear about, and you read in fantastical books about wild experiences, that Joe Rogan is trying to experience through, LSD and hallucinogenics, then you wind up building a tougher time with your own mind when you're trying to meditate. The idea isn't about, reaching the Buddha level. The idea is, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
it's like, the idea isn't to meet God now, or whatever you call God, or whatever the Buddha achieved, or any of these other people achieved. The idea is to just take one weed out of the garden today.
Right. Right.
And if you were lucky enough or diligent enough to have some sort of experience out of the body, or whatever people talk about and all that other stuff, then that's great. But you wouldn't go around talking about it either, because if you had reached that, you would have a different ego and a different sense of what you would, how to approach that with someone. So it's not something that, even someone who has those kinds of experiences whenever they want.
You can never see anybody talk about them on anything.
Yeah, like they wouldn't, but except for like Joe Rogan, who's trying to achieve it through LSD and different things. So
and ayahuasca, whatnot.
yeah, and so Jora, how'd I do? What do you think of those kinds of meditation stories? How do you approach those stories?
Well, certainly when you read the writings of great saints and mystics who've come since time immemorial, they talk about experiences that are transcendent, and they talk about light, and they talk about sound. And certainly, meditation at its roots is a spiritual practice. And part of what can happen when one sits in meditation with love in their hearts is they can feel these transcendent moments. But as Joe was saying, you can't make that happen. Right. There's a term, it eludes me now, but it's a term in Persian that calls, and it's a word for God, and it actually translates as he who comes of his own accord. And the idea is when you sit in meditation, you don't sit with expectations of a transcendent experience. You sit with love in your heart, and you sit peacefully. And sometimes these things will open, but you can't make a flower open until it's ready to open. But that doesn't negate the value of every step of that flower's growth. You know, every time you sit and you sit peacefully, you sit present, and you sit with love in your heart, you will be allowing that flower to grow, and eventually it will open, sometimes sooner, sometimes later. But you know, I think the main thing is that we not worry, because when we have those expectations, we're not present. We're sort of worrying. What's this all going to amount to? What am I going to get?
Okay.
You know,
Right.
but I think the benefits start to become very present by just sitting and being still. It's funny that I have this little quote that I next to my desk that I find very motivating, and for me anyway. And it's if every 8-year-old in the world is taught meditation, it will eliminate violence from the world within 1 generation.
Huh. That's pretty
So
amazing.
that's the Dalai Lama who said that. And you know, I don't know what unfolds for each and every person individually, like Joe said, because it is an individual practice. But you know, that connection that we can have with our true self can take lots of forms. There can be some visual experience. There can be some feelings of joy. There can be some feelings of quiet, of peace. There can really be a spark in creativity. So there's different ways that this quiet can bring out something inside you that is a very positive thing. We think, one thing we know about meditation, because they've done all these studies on monks, and they've scanned their brains, and what they find is when they're in a meditative state, they're activating the prefrontal cortex.
Mhm.
And what we know about that part of the brain is that's the part of the brain where a lot of the higher functions happen.
Right.
And, you know, a lot of things like joy is found in that part of, or is touched in that part of the brain. So what's going to unfold for you when you start putting your awareness in that part of your consciousness? I don't know, but it'll be good.
Well, and you won't be hungover.
And it doesn't cost anything.
Yeah.
Free.
And you can drive afterwards, or like while.
That's
There's a few things about hallucinogenics and meditation. You shouldn't drive while doing either, but if you can meditate with your eyes open, you're much better off driving while meditating. So the one thing though that was funny that came up for me while you were speaking, Jora, was like with the Dalai Lama. I don't force my kids to meditate. I try and be the example. But boy, I wish it was a regular part of their school day. I think it would transform the world.
I believe it would too.
I really do. And I don't think it's that much to ask for, but whatever.
Yeah, but you could also get rid of Twinkies, Burger King, and heroin, and things would probably get better too. But
well, yeah, but that's not achievable. Asking kids to meditate
Why
in
is it?
schools is achievable, actually, if you ask me. You know,
I think that
your
should
father is never letting go of his Twinkies.
be. No.
Don't take my Twinkies.
No, don't take my Twinkies, please. I was trying to think if there was anything else that I wanted to do. Is there anything else? I have some big news actually, because we're winding down. So this is our last show. We had mentioned that,
Yeah,
and I really do hope that
like not forever, but just
No,
for
the
this
last
year.
show for 2020.
Make that clear.
And I wish everybody a happy holiday, and thank you all for going on this journey with us. And because it's been a fun couple of months and we've learned a lot and we're, hopefully getting better at this thing. But we are going to start up in January, but I won't be here. It'll be enough of me entirely.
Like he's not even going to be on the picture.
I'm not even going to
anymore.
be here. I have something that I have to go do for a couple of weeks. So Arlene Harrington is going to be the guest host, and she's going to book a few guests, and there's a couple of guests already booked. And anybody who watches the show knows that Arlene is the greatest guest we have.
Yeah.
So when it came time for me to say, I can't do this, who's going to do it? Arlene was the first, and I asked her, and she said yes. So I'm sure you'll all be very excited through the month of January, and we'll put posts out on Facebook and whatnot. And so I'm rooting for you, girl. I know you're going to be better than me, so you get them. And anything else? Do you want to finish with anything, Jorah?
I would just thank you. And it was wonderful to be with both of you. And I'm looking forward to standing in the river with you someday, Dan. It sounds
Oh,
Dan, he's a catch and release kind of guy. So if you had to fish, you want to fish with Dan, because I don't want to be pulling him out of the water.
well, unless it's salt water, but we don't do that often.
Yeah, but
thank you guys, really. It's very sweet to spend this time with you. Thank you.
You're amazing. Thank you.
you're the best. Oh, and Greg Campion, I have been totally present for this episode of Enough About Me. We should close with that.
Yeah.
Anything else? No?
Happy holidays.
Happy holiday. Thank you, Jorah. You're the best. I love you.
Bye, everyone.
You got it all.
Thank you.